It's such a sweet song, Charles. We need a new graphic opening for closing in. Maybe we could have some garage door closing on Hillary or something like that.
That might be funny, yeah. That might be funny.
But Forrest Chump,
again,
my favorite dope, George W., the least favorite dope.
You know, he's distantly related to me, so I suppose I can have at him mercilessly. But
you know, there's a nasty rumor floating around, which David Hawkins told me, that he's actually not stupid. I don't believe that.
Well, as I was saying before we started, I think he's certainly not cagey, but I don't think it's that easy in the time frame when he did this. It was not that easy to succeed in getting through Phillips Andover and then Yale and then Harvard Business School. It may have been easy to do one of those, but all three, not so easy.
This is why he's got all that blow.
But yeah, I was prepared to, I going back into politics, I'm far more of a Reagan fan, and I wasn't particularly happy about H.W., either his candidacy or his presidency or his vice presidency.
Or the fact that he was present on the planet.
I wasn't a huge fan. I'm not a huge fan. George W., I've heard from many people who do in fact know. Some people say he's thick as a plank.
Yeah, I think that's accurate.
You know, and others say that on one-on-one meetings he's very good, but in group settings not so good. And then you've got to ask yourself, you know, what was really going on here with the powers that be? I mean, were decisions made a long time ago that actually what we want is not a powerful president, we want a schlub, you know, to be in there. We saw what Reagan could do, and maybe we don't want somebody that powerful, let's get H.W., you know, and then that didn't work, so let's try Phil. You know, and then
we fundamentally disagree, because I personally think that Ronald Reagan was selected because he could give good speeches and look powerful in a suit, but they tried to kill him right away, and I think H.W. was behind that.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but yeah.
Friends with the Hinckley family, having breakfast with John Hinckley Sr. the morning of the assassination attempt. And I've recently learned that Reagan was, like, I remember as a little kid, Reagan got shot and then he was out of the hospital and I was like, oh, he's fine. But very near death, apparently.
Right, yeah. Actually, I have a friend, she's now passed away. I grew up, I should say, my parents had these friends who were in the movie business, theater business, etc. And this particular mother was in multiple Ronald Reagan movies, including, I think, possibly the famous was it Bedtime. I think she might have been in that one. She didn't think too highly of Ronald Reagan.
A monkey movie. They could do a remake and have our buddy here, Forrest Chump, play Bonzo.
But if you think back to it, in 1992, the world was, you know, there for America. I mean, we had the period 1992 to 1999, there was irrational exuberance, as Alan Greenspan would like to say, but I mean, we were firing on all cylinders. There was no India Inc. in 1992, it was still socialist. China was basically just emerging. Europe was a mess.
Internet economy exploding.
Yeah, and we could have done arguably a lot better than we did under Bill Clinton. The excesses were not tamed. We went to, you know, that gigantic internet burst. And in that time frame, of course, the Soviet Union disappeared. The wind went towards America. Eastern Europe became more or less in the capitalist system. Threats that had been there for a long time disappeared momentarily. So George W. Bush, when as Hillary says, you know, he was selected, not elected, I don't buy that argument, but you know, he did have a pretty strong hand to play in the beginning. And you think about what happened between 2001, January 2001 and January 2009. I mean, it was, what didn't he screw up, right?
Yeah.
and you know, I think enough time has passed. I was very hopeful that actually George W. would get a good team together and get us back on the rails. I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt, particularly after September 11th.
He couldn't even get a good baseball team together.
He made decent money on that one.
I thought he almost tanked, what was it, the Texas
Rangers? No, I don't think he tanked them, but I think he made like $15 million on a $500,000 investment, thereabouts.
Wow, that seems, how did that
was
happen?
not an insider deal, no, not a sweetheart deal. Nah. of course not. But when we look, candidly now, with the benefit of time having passed at this person and this presidency, what happened? I mean, we're still at war, the wars that he started.
Right.
I think most people do now concede that going into Iraq the way we went into Iraq, going into Afghanistan the way we went, rather than, if we're going to try to win a war, throw everything that you can at actually winning, and
or how about go to war with the people that actually have anything to do with the problem?
Yeah, that's a concept. But and then as far as regulation is concerned, as far as the state of the economy is concerned, all these scandals that weren't never really cleaned up, and then you could argue that George W. Bush's crappy job brought us Obama, and then we got another 8 years of pain for doing that. So, I mean, when you run for the top job, President of the United States, yes, you get to fly around in Air Force One, and yes, you do serve the country in theory, but also you are going to be judged, for your remaining life, and then afterwards, historians are going to look back on this, and they are not going to look very strongly, I don't think, on the W presidency.
No.
And with the Obama one, even worse, if that's humanly possible.
Well, the only reason why I would say that W is worse than Obama is that 9/11, he was busy reading My Pet Goat when,
Well, when we look at the magnitude of the spending, people were bitching and moaning rightfully when we launched the two wars and we had the gigantic deficits. Those are peanuts compared to the size of the deficit under Obama.
Yeah.
And I'm much more of a numbers person than I am a word person, and so when you look at the actual stated numbers and the economic performance of the United States of American government sector, it was not great under W. Bush, but I mean, we now have structural government deficits.
What does that mean?
Well, Obama and his people were very clever in putting these entitlements in that are very tough to take away, and not having any discipline. So it's very tough to actually cut government spending and not have a revolution on your hands of all the people going out and voting against you in the different elections. So I think structurally the government deficits got much worse. The approach towards regulation and failure to go after corruption was not good. It sent the wrong message, I think, around the world and inside this country. But fraud is great. It's like,
Well, Charles, what I've got queued up here is undoubtedly the finest moment of George W.'s presidency. Of course, you're going to recall when he dodged the shoe quite adeptly, I must add.
Pretty good reflexes.
Yeah, not bad. It's from his carnival days. Yeah. Put him in the Dunk-a-Dope machine or whatever that is.
Yeah. And you think about it, I mean, here we spent all this money in Iraq, right? And you would think that possibly there might be some gratitude, maybe, for what we did.
Gratitude from who?
From the people that, we quote, liberated in Iraq?
No, we've irradiated them with depleted uranium and blown up their whole country. Why would they be grateful?
Yeah, I'm just saying. I mean, the theory is, after World War II, there was a certain amount of gratitude. Eventually, out of Germany, out of Japan, we were pretty rough on Japan. A lot rougher than we were on Iraq. But anyway,
that's true. Well,
what I thought we'd do is I want to try to keep it to the time limit. But really, the art department once again has outdone itself. So
thank you very much. You get the Forrest Chump. The one thing I did want to touch on before we get fully into today's episode is the new segment that we've come up with, Charles, which was inspired by, of course, the Crowdsource community, and that is this segment here called 90 Seconds with Charles Ortel. And what we're doing with that, if people haven't yet had a chance to see it, is actually going back and just having a brief discussion, little overview of the most important aspects of the shows of the past, so that people who maybe haven't had an opportunity to see them or to go through the sometimes hours-long presentations, at least they've got now what will build up to be a guide of the key points of these presentations, and I'll link them to the original presentation once we've got them all up there. So I thought that went pretty well. It was beautiful weather, so.
Well, thank you for doing this. And also a shout out to somebody in the Twitter universe or Twitterverse or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
I don't know this person's name, but whoever it is has done a tremendous amount of work laying out not only all the videos and all the presentations that this person could find, but in addition, links to a whole bunch of related articles in an organized fashion. And we're going to get that linked in, I think, to Crowdsource the Truth. So.
Yeah, what I'll do is, because I just got that, I want to go through that before I put it up, because it might have email addresses and stuff. But the other thing it did is that it very carefully outlined where I've forgotten to include your PDF presentation. So that'll be nice. I'll go back and put that in. We're basically doing a little spring cleaning here with Sunday with Charles and Closing In and now 90 Seconds. And we'll have, it's almost like the Charles Ortel network of programs. And that'll be great for people who, this goes with the theme of Closing In. It's not just a clever title for a Wednesday show, which, well, Tuesday actually today, but we try to remain flexible for scheduling. But so that if you're dealing with France, you want to be able to quickly find that episode and go to that versus any of these other countries or other issues or states or whatever. So that's the goal with that, and we'll keep pressing on.
I think that's a great idea, and I think I think this is now our 71st show.
I think it might be even more. We've got
right?
the playlist, of course, which this is 71 in there. So people who go to the Sunday with Charles playlist can follow all the episodes and easily find them there. We've got, of course, Green Regs and Scam, which I'm meaning to put a mug up in the redbubble.com Crowdsource the Truth merchandise store. Oh, and you know, the other thing I wanted to tell you, Charles, is that the Russian social media network, VK.com, where we are also live streaming, and if people want to, they can join VK.com, and it's an alternative to YouTube and Facebook, and I don't know too much about it other than it does have a pretty robust streaming platform, and I can tell you that Sunday with Charles is by far the most popular Crowdsource the Truth show in Russia. So privyet to all of our friends who are watching overseas in Russia. And as a matter of fact, I mean, you can see each of the episodes is regularly exceeding 100 views, which is, you know, relatively small, but considering I don't know anybody in Russia or have any friends on this social media network.
So you say.
But this is the most impressive. The Xena episode, I think people are so attracted to this image of Mrs. Clinton. But 226 views, pretty impressive given the duration of the show and the whole nature of us not really, you know.
Speaking any Russian.
Speaking right, that's what I mean. It's a foreign language program and on a network where we don't have a lot of followers or connections. So I think that's good performance for the show.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And you're right to say that our viewership has been very indulgent, I think, for a reason, and that is that viewership seems to understand, looking through the emails I get and comments I get, that this is a complex topic that cannot readily be addressed in just, you know,
3 minutes.
3 minutes, you know, in between advertisements for adult diapers and you know what else, whatever else.
We like My Pillow.
I didn't bring it up. I didn't say a word. But
he should become a sponsor now that we're mentioning it every week.
We could have a special. You're doing Green Regs and Scam pillowcase.
That's a good idea. That's a very good idea. I think they do allow you to do that. The other thing that people should do is they should be following you on Twitter at Charles Ortel, and they can also, of course, go to charlesortel.com and find a lot of links there, a lot of information about everything that we're talking about. And those are good resources for people as well.
Well, thank you for that, Jason.
Yeah. And without further ado, Charles, we'll go to the presentation. Oh, there's one other interesting thing that I've done today for the first time. We've actually included the link to the presentation before the show, so people can download that right now if you're looking at patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Or if you're on YouTube, right there in the comments section, the video description, you can download this presentation. You can follow along as we go and dive into the articles or whatever.
Yeah, so thinking about this a little bit, and you know, I think we have enough perspective to look with clear eyes back at the Bush years. And then thinking about the great American divide, you're not going to have, from the resistance people, who are resisting and persisting and insisting with Hillary Clinton.
Right, buying books.
Yeah, doing all that stuff.
Highly reviewed books.
Yeah, exactly, those are beautiful. Something happened to them, I think. But those people, probably, there's a nice Venn diagram, where you put two shapes, and it's like that. The people who like Hillary Clinton probably dislike, many of them dislike George W. Bush, except for this, this ridiculous.
No, they love him now. Joy Behar thinks he's fantastic.
Is that right? Okay.
Painting birds or whatever the hell.
And I
he's doing.
value her opinion. I really do. Before I do anything, I say, what would Joy Behar say about X,
How
Y,
is
Z?
she on TV? I mean, she strikes me as like an annoying principal of a school or something.
Worse. She's working in the school lunchroom, cleaning it up because they won't let her near the food. But anyway. There's, I think, a large body of people on the left who really dislike George W. Bush.
Yeah.
And I think there's an increasing number of people like me, former Republicans, who look at this and say, no, enough of this dynastic political family crap, and enough of all the excuses why we should say he's doing a great job. Let's go back to square one. Donald Trump is not the perfect person, but he is a very decent disruptor. That's what we need to get out of this mess and morass. We got to have a disruptor. And I think we're at a moment now where people are going to fairly, not like yelling and screaming and throwing shoes at George W. Bush, just saying.
I do like that.
Yeah, it is a nice metaphor. But they're going to look at it and say, listen, dude, I mean, it's not, you can't say that you needed to learn on the job. I mean, you could call Dad up and say, hey, when you were president briefly, what did you learn? And while you were vice president, by the way, what did you learn? I mean, he had a lot of advantages going for him.
Right.
And still, we ended up with Obama. And we ended up, I mean, the world literally nearly went completely unglued just at the end of 2008. Just when right? I mean,
the
just
mortgage crisis, you mean?
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it was long unfolding. And first, the first signs of it bit really hard in March, April 2007. He had a lot of notice. And instead of getting it fixed, we literally nearly collapsed the global economy.
I think they did that on purpose, Charles. I mean, I obviously have virtually no knowledge of this economic type stuff, but when I saw that movie, The Big Short, that told a part of the story, but I saw some documentary about Hank Paulson and all this, and I could not help but think, because after that I saw a documentary about the savings and loan crisis, which I think Neil Bush was really involved in, and it was all these banks in Texas and Louisiana and Florida and everything, and it just seemed like a beta test for the 2008 thing.
No, the 2008 thing, it's more that George W., for a period of time, he controlled the House, I think, the Senate, and the executive branch. He had, all the advantages of being the son of a former president, all the contacts and the big name.
Right.
And so he should have been able to accomplish a lot more than he did accomplish. Now, granted, we don't need to pin 9/11 on him, although some people might want to do that.
Yeah, that was mostly Dick Cheney's fault.
Right, but that was obviously a major league tailwind, or headwind, or whatever.
Yeah.
Headwind, rather.
Well, no, but you know what? You bring up something interesting, because you're talking about what he accomplished, or when you think about it, he accomplished quite a bit. The entire world changed. You can't get on an airplane without getting, felt up by someone in a blue suit. So if what you wanted was to strip away people's rights, allow mass surveillance, restrict freedom, he did a great job.
Yeah, well, which I really don't think anybody actually wants that. And the more we think about it, I see these ads on television now for Alexa, and you get this thing, Cortana, and some other thing. Next thing you know, your entire life will be on television 24/7. It'll be mining your dreams, it'll be mining your thoughts, and I don't think that's a very productive approach, given how nasty a big percentage of the human race actually is. I just don't like the direction we're going in. But anyway, this is what we're trying to do here is give some more perspective on how the Clinton frauds, the Clinton charity frauds, some in league with the Bushes, how did they flourish? Why did they escape being unscathed? But before we get into that, we do need to talk about some breaking developments, because there's been a lot of stuff going on. So what I thought we might do is go to the next page. For our new viewers, we'll just quickly go over this disclaimer that when Jason and I do this kind of presentation, we have done research. We try to find as many relevant facts as we can. We solicit opinions. We read analysis. In the end of the day, it's our judgment that is reflected in the comments that we make here. And we try to give you, the viewership, the chance to look at some of these source materials for yourselves, because we all make mistakes. We could be wrong. I appreciate getting suggestions of how I might improve or how we might look at things slightly differently. So the format of this show is really, it's Jason and me talking about these issues that are important. Our audience remains, our target audience remains the prosecutors, the investigators around the world. We are not at this moment trying to get 1 million views on a podcast by dumbing it down to 2 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever.
You're not going to have cats and
no cats. You don't like cats.
I do not like cats.
You're anti-cat.
Well, I'm allergic to them.
Well, that's a good reason.
Yeah.
Goddamn things, they make you sick. But
all the cat people hate us now.
It's
right.
life.
It's okay.
But I also don't imagine you following a dog around New York cleaning up it.
Well, I do like dogs. I find them friendly, but yes, in New York, I think it's a little difficult to own a dog. And
yeah, it's a good question. Who owns you?
Right. Yeah.
Who owns what? But anyway, so it's important people understand that we do base our work on source material. We beg your indulgence for the length of these shows. It's important, as we're getting close to the target here, we may be past the target here, that the investigators understand and appreciate just how big a team around the world is looking at this. There's a lot of people who are looking at this, just waiting for the first indictment, the first sign that the federal government under Trump is actually going to police the swamp.
Blood in the water.
Once that happens, it's going to be fun to watch.
The sharks will swarm.
It'll be fun to watch.
We should have some kind of party or some kind of event.
Yeah.
Like they have the inauguration, this could be the indictment party.
We could be indictment bingo.
Right.
So we had, yesterday, late in the day, we had a leak, and I'll tell you which ones to pull up. We don't necessarily need to pull them all up, because that way it might be longer.
Sure.
We had, on the one hand, the New York Times breathlessly reporting, the same guy, I think, there we have him, Michael Schmidt, that here were a whole bunch of questions, more than 40 questions that Mueller wanted to ask Trump. And immediately Trump jumped on that, and his people jumped on, this is a sign that the deep state is leaking and Mueller's leaking, it's awful. So that's one narrative. And it was followed quickly this morning by a second narrative, which is in the next link. People arguing that one of his former assistants saying, no, actually it was Trump's lawyers who were writing down the questions, and we can tell that because they're grammatical errors and typographical errors.
Is that true?
Yeah, that's what the story says.
But I mean, did they? How can we verify if they did?
I don't know. I mean, the history, particularly when you go through and read "License to Lie" by Sidney Powell, and look critically at Mueller's long history and the people around him, their long history of trying cases in the press, leaking illegally to the press, to use public opinion against the defendant, to get the defendant to just give up against the almighty government. This is an abuse of power, and the more we've been on this campaign for some time. If you wanted to pick the worst possible team to clear the air up, about what actually may have happened with the collusion delusion investigation, you couldn't have picked a worse team than you now have, because even, God forbid, even if there's an ironclad picture of Donald Trump, in with his shirt off and Vladimir Putin, on a horseback through Siberia, sealing the deal in a famous memorandum of understanding about how they're going to collude. Even then, right, a large majority of the population is going to say, we can't trust this. I mean, there's so many conflicts in this. This is a vendetta. It's a witch hunt. There should have, if they were going to go down this path, you and I argued months ago, go down on this path. What you do is don't make it just about 2015, 2016. Don't make it just about Trump. Go way back and have the American public get into the idea that whatever our political spectrum, we want to be sure that there is no foreign or minimal foreign interference in our elections. And then we want to have a grown-up discussion about whether the United States government, either monitored by Congress or unmonitored by the deep state, whether our United States government should be meddling in foreign elections. Because it seems to me if we're going to make a big issue of it here, that it's
Right.
so horrible, we shouldn't then turn around and do it internationally.
Well, it's sort of like do as I say, not as I do. I think it's interesting, Charles, because more than any time I can ever remember, the American public, I mean the world at large, is seeing this practice of political opposition research and really a disinformation war, because just this article that you've brought up here from Zero Hedge, it's like, all right, well,
Doesn't have many shares.
no, not many, but I'm saying, did Trump leak? Did Mueller leak? I mean, this would be easy for someone to set up false evidence to make you believe that that happened, and the American people are left sort of like, a lot of people tell me they don't know who to trust.
Well, you know, what I noticed actually through this process, particularly in the whole Peter Smith days and all that, when that story came out, when that Wall Street Journal guy
Peter
contacted me, when I met you the first day, in the middle of the shoot, and you know the way in which that guy, who was transferred into the Wall Street Journal, so he's a new employee.
Shane something.
Shane, exactly. I forget his last name. The way he contacts me and he says, "I'm going to run a story today, about what's your reaction to this?" I'm like, what are you talking about? And then presto changeo, this new employee is of the Wall Street Journal, owned by ultimately big shareholders, the Murdochs at that time.
Oh.
How does he promptly get on MSNBC? That same with the story right away. And
It's
you see it, they have this ambush journalism approach. They're out to get the enemy. They have the ability to just put you immediately on a wide variety of shows, from CNN to MSNBC to radio, to get extensive coverage in the print, in the magazines, et cetera. And then all the talking heads will reinforce in the echo chamber, whatever allegations they want to make. Whereas the right wing doesn't really, and certainly Trump doesn't have the same ability to manipulate the press. And I think if you just go through, I'm adamant on Mueller having, I have great respect for Sidney Powell. I've read her book carefully. I've interviewed her about it. There's a long track record here of questionable behavior. And Louis Gohmert, your friend, you met him down there in Texas.
Yep.
He issued a 48-page memorandum going into great depth. I won't recount everything because I can't remember all the instances, but it's not like, Bob Mueller is no Boy Scout. James Comey, is I don't know how long he's going to hang on to this money he thinks he made. and then this Rosenstein character, again, there's some major league questions about all these guys.
Yeah. And we're coming up on, I think, 1 year since the death of Peter Smith, isn't that right? Was it like end of May or when?
I think it was mid-May, but I may have that wrong.
Yeah, we got to get back in touch with Pepper Stanley. She had provided that surveillance video from Walmart, which seemed to be fake.
Right.
So that's what I mean. People put out these types of stories to misdirect. It's very strange.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And actually, there used to be high standards. It's funny, when I got involved in this writing and media stuff, I'd meet these journalists who would try to explain to me how rigorous their standards are. And I'm like, dude, I mean, in the merger business, it publicly contested merger transactions involving large publicly traded companies. You screw up, you can go to jail.
Right.
And your firm can lose, hundreds of millions of dollars if you're not careful.
Rigor.
That's rigorous. So, with that kind of stuff, you make sure that you have, it's not that you have multiple sources. Our typical approach of a presentation we would do back then is you'd have this kind of a slide presentation, and then behind it there would be an exhibit, each major point, and then
Christopher Steele, Yahoo News.
Yeah, exactly. We'd have an exhibit, a backup book for the main presentation, then a backup book to the backup book. And if it was really serious, you'd bring in outside experts to corroborate this and that. So the notion that journalists are going to tell us about how careful we ought to be, in 2018, I don't think that's really the way it works. So we have now Hillary Clinton. This is interesting. This first story, The Atlantic, which is not. It's
high
not exact.
profile.
Atlantic is hardly, a conservative Republican magazine. I mean, it's pretty left-leaning, and we're beginning to see, I think, some Bernie people who might be around the Atlantic, some thoughtful people say, actually, Hillary, you tried. Seabiscuit. You're not so far away from the glue factory right now.
She looks high in this photo, Charles.
She looks like she's wearing a cast, isn't it?
Yes,
a cast?
and she's very injury prone,
Right.
huh? Because of the balance problem, maybe from her concussion or whatever.
Yeah, and it's not like, what's that famous football movie about this guy in Notre Dame who's very small physically, and it's a very moving story about how this guy, didn't really have the temperament to be a football player or the physique.
Not the one about Sandra Bullock.
No. I don't know. Anyway, it's not like that case that Hillary has never been put in any game. It's not like she's never had a chance. It's not like she hasn't been on the political stage since whatever. And it's not as if she wasn't the presumptive front runner in 2007, presumptive front runner in 2015, and one belly flop is worse than the next. And now you're sitting here at a moment in time, you could say Donald Trump is not worth $10 billion, but you can't say that Donald Trump has no game and no case to make in 2020. You can't say that he might not be a formidable force in the 2018 midterm elections if things keep going this way. So to have somebody over here this ethically challenged, insisting on taking up airtime, more power to her. She's
using up air.
Yeah, she's basically, I think, crippling her own party. And again, just as we look critically now at George W. Bush, I think history is not going to be kind to this person, and that's before considering whether she actually has to face time.
Indictment. Yeah, I find it difficult to imagine that they would actually stick her in jail, but I think an indictment would be very satisfying at least. And also, this is the Women in the World Summit, so I mean, she is that. She's a woman, and she's in the world, so I guess she's qualified to speak there.
Let's look at this carefully. I mean, you're sitting there, right, and you're worth whatever they're worth, $200 million, right? You want to put your best foot forward.
Yeah.
You've got Uma Abedin, you've got Dennis Cheng, you've got all these, minders, whatever. You've done such a horrible job in the reboot, the Scooby-Doo van, all these images. So what do you decide to do? What invitation do you accept? What is the date of that summit?
April 13th.
Which was what day of the week?
I don't know.
Friday.
Friday the 13th, right.
Unless she's, feeling lucky, I think I'll do a big thing on Friday the 13th. I mean, it's just...
Well, I mean, maybe she's not that superstitious.
Maybe she should be.
Sacrifice a chicken to Moloch, and that'll solve the problem.
Anyway, so if we go back into it,
Moloch.
You like that word, don't you?
Well, this superb owl. They certainly love to worship him.
And just to show that we do put up sources on the left as well as the right, here, this Huffington Post. That's Newsweek. You missed the Huffington Post. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. We'll go back and get that. Oh yeah, because it's the double.
It's just in.
The double dip.
And this is a phone call that Hillary Clinton doesn't want to get. I want the money back I gave you.
Oh, you know what? I responded to this tweet. Have you ever heard of someone called Old Dirty Bastard?
I've heard of the wine Fat Bastard. But
No. I responded to Thomas Paine of True Pundit's tweet about this with the Old Dirty Bastard song, Baby, I Got Your Money.
Well, I think the Clintons are very into taking money and really not so much interested in giving any money back. So
return the money. I mean, yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's happen.
I don't think that's going to happen.
So it's called giving back.
No.
Right. So, yeah, with this Newsweek one right there. Now, Newsweek 40 years ago was a joke, but now it's just absurd. There clearly is no editor there worth a damn.
Kurt Eichenwald.
I mean, let's think about how many different ways does this indict James Comey. I'd still have a job if Hillary Clinton had won the election. Actually, probably not. She would have milked you, but they were not happy about what you did, James. And you thought you were going to have a job. Your utility would be rather short-lived.
His job is going to be pounding rocks pretty soon. Or making license plates. They might have him do that.
Turning big rocks into smaller rocks.
Right.
Yeah.
James Comey, my goodness. So he ended the book tour, right?
Did he finish it already?
I believe he did. I think I heard Laura say something about that because I forget the exact reason.
On advice of counsel?
Something like that, yeah. It was just like, hey, by the way, they're making orange suits in XXL.
So this here is a shout out to John Batchelor, the eminent radio host, the John Batchelor Show, who's kind enough to let me on a show for several years now. But he's going back over the ground here of when the fix went in to make Hillary Clinton succeed Barack Obama. And he had on the great Andrew C. McCarthy, a former federal prosecutor who's highly experienced. And I think Thad McCotter is a former Alabama congressperson, if I remember correctly. But this is actually a great show, John Batchelor Show. It's on, it used to be on 3 to 4 hours a night in the 9 p.m. and afterwards. And it's not really a political show. It's just a general interest show covering a whole bunch of topics: history, science, literature, and when there's gripping political events. And he's very, very amusing as well. So I highly commend that show.
Great.
So we've talked about when the fix was in, right? The fix actually was certainly in by the 10th of July, 2015. And that's the significant date. If we just pull this one up here.
But the fix, you mean what? Covering the...
Well, by the 10th of July, this is, I've been, shout out to the people at Fox. I hope you watch this. People talk endlessly about how there's no record, no transcript of Hillary Clinton's interview in July 2nd, 2016. And there it is, right there.
Yeah.
It's right there. We've shown it to people many times. Here's a summary of the whole case here.
Which one is it, this one?
That one there is a transcript, it's right there. On July 2nd, Hillary Rodham Clinton. They misspelled her middle name. Isn't it Rotten? Anyway, so this is a summary that goes through. There's significant stuff, redacted, but there is a record of it, and it was prepared. It was transcribed on the very day that she was interviewed. Peter Strzok, I believe, was involved in this.
Huh.
And this is not something...
Why didn't he text it?
He probably did text it. But there you have FBI Section Chief Peter Strzok.
Oh yeah, look at that.
And so the point here is that there was a transcript of this. People need to read not only this part 2, but the other one, Jason, if we could show them part 1.
Yeah.
Thank you. Part 1 is over here. And this is a whole long summary of the case, how it came into being. It says, on July 10th, 2015, the Federal Bureau of Investigation initiated a full investigation based upon a referral. And so that by July 10th, 2015, the fix was in. The Inspector General and the intelligence community have been rooting around the records after December 5th, 2014, when Hillary Clinton's people turned over what purported to be all the work-related emails, potentially work-related emails. Probably before then, but certainly by then, heads started spinning, and people started to say, "Whoa, what happened here?"
Yeah.
And by the 10th of July, 2015, the FBI had no choice, because this Section 811C Act required them to open an investigation. They had no choice but to do that. So the question is, who did they put on that investigation and why? And this is, I hope, what Horowitz is studying. But here you have, those of you who want to read this for the first time, you have extensive, a good summary here with a lot of redactions that gives you a feeling for how far along the FBI already was by July 10th, 2015. And remember, Hillary has announced that she's going to run to be the Democratic presidential candidate. She's only been at that, officially for 3 months at this point. You've got other people announced. You've got Bernie in the wings. And obviously you have the Republicans going at it. Why, oh why, would a Democratic president, take the risk of and the Democratic Party, why would you take the risk of running this candidate, letting this person, do what ultimately happened to your party, take up so much oxygen out of the atmosphere, put so much CO2 back into, kill so many trees.
Methane, I think.
But raise so much money, leave the Democratic Party in distress and debt, and not win. You had to know, as you like to say, a betting person, you look at this and you say, okay, got a candidate over here, rich, under FBI investigation because mishandled classified information, in the most recent, highest position that she had, which is her paramount argument for being your next president.
Yeah.
That she did such a great job mishandling classified information as Secretary of State. Imagine what we could do once we're in the White House again.
Right.
Right? It doesn't make any sense that you would do that unless there's a very bad reason.
Well, there's a nice armoire there that she wants to take.
That's right. I'll take that. Yeah.
But Charles, is the referral that person who went from the State Department to the FBI?
No.
What's the referral?
So the referral is that when, the thesis that it was okay for the Clintons to run the State Department and run the Clinton Foundation over secret servers, over devices that weren't monitored properly, and run 100% of their business that way, and then walk out the front door on February 1st, 2013 with all that stuff, and then keep all that stuff and bleach bit and and only by December 5th, 2014, turn over with no oversight from anybody, no external oversight. You say, well, I'll give you some of your property back. I stole it for almost 2 years, but I promise I'll give you all of the property I stole back. You just can't check.
Right.
To take that kind of a risk, the reason you take that kind of a risk is you're implicated. And as a guess, we will ultimately find out if the Horowitz team is persistent. And this will be the test for the Horowitz report. We will discover that there are multiple emails back and forth to Barack Obama, to Valerie Jarrett, to Eric Holder, to others, maybe to people in the IRS, over this secret server system.
Don't we know that already? Didn't
we don't know the full
say she has email from Hillary that doesn't have the state.gov email address?
Right, but we don't know the full extent.
Yeah,
we don't know the full extent of it yet. So as a guess, what's good for me is good for so if Barack wins, why he picked Hillary Clinton and the Clinton people, why he let Eric Holder in there, why he let all these different people tied to the Clintons, close to levers of power, holding big levers of power. The only reason to do that is if the Clintons really had something on the Obamas, which is what I suspect is the case and what I suspect we will ultimately discover if we're allowed to discover all this stuff. And so the fix definitely was in by July 10th, 2015. James Comey certainly had to know. I mean, you put yourself in the mind of what kind of group do you work in? I mean, you're not working in the sunbathing group, you're working in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. People there, I hope, like to investigate things. They're problem solvers, and you're sitting here, you go, hey, boss, you're not gonna believe this little problem over here we got. Maybe the Clintons have dirt on the Obamas and are blackmailing the Obamas. Maybe we should think about that. Nah, I'm too busy. I'm gonna write a book.
Yeah, no, I mean, with Andrew McCabe there, it was quite clearly the Federal Bureau of not investigating anything.
Well, or the Federal Bureau in league with the deep state of saying, this fiction of elections mattering and all that kind of stuff, forget that. We've got this gigantic system now that monitors everything, every keystroke, can listen to anything. We know all the corporate secrets. When there's a big contested takeover, we know how much the top bidder's going to pay. We know, all the downsides, all this. We could basically lurk in the shadows.
Trade on that info.
Be the puppeteers and let these other people go and lay out. Who wants to go to cabinet meetings? I can just fly around in a rented Gulfstream jet, direct my minions to do X, Y, and Z, scoop up billions, nobody will be the wiser.
Why waste money renting a jet when you could buy one?
Yeah, and steal
one.
Then
you could have a meeting with Loretta Lynch on the tarmac.
Right, so I think that it's possible. I mean, I'm not a betting person per se, but I like to think about what is the probability of this outcome, that outcome. And you look at this mess, a way to explain this, honestly going way back, it's not partisan to say that in H.W. Bush we had a very weak president.
Yeah.
In Clinton, we had a deeply flawed president. Mm-hmm. I think potentially quite vulnerable to blackmail and all sorts of other problems. In W. Bush, we had a vulnerable president, flawed president. And certainly in Obama, we had a vulnerable president. In Donald Trump, we also have a vulnerable president, except we have a fighter, who's not good, who faces down bullies.
Now, what do you see Donald Trump's biggest vulnerability being?
Well, I think, it's regrettable, the Stormy Daniels stuff and all that. I don't think that ultimately will bring him down.
Doesn't seem to have really moved the needle. I mean, people it was consensual and...
But what I do think, and I've been among the first people to say this when I was frequently on Fox. Right away I said, listen, the smart thing to do here is just to put everything around you in a trust, just so nobody's going to be able to say boo about your business interest. And he didn't do that. And Melania has money, and the kids have money, whatever. It would have been a lot wiser, I think, to just take the argument off the table. That
the emoluments
and all that. So take that right off the table by doing what other people have done. Put it in a trust. If you're worth $10 billion, even if he's only worth $2 billion,
is he worth that much?
Well, he said he was worth 10 on his form. So whatever the number is, let's say it's probably at least 2, could be 10.
Wow.
You're not really worried about whether you make $1 million here or 500,000 there. And that's a lot of money, $2 to $10 billion. Put that in trust, get it off the table. He wouldn't do that. And I don't think that's a fatal flaw, but I think it is going to be, it could well create more problems for him at an inopportune time.
Charles, Jib Camera on Periscope is saying that Brennan's company was in Obama's records.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's John Brennan is, in my mind, I have no idea how that person, A, got a security clearance, and B, became head of the CIA, and C, is daring to threaten the President of the United States, given how crazy his record looks to me, just as an outsider. I mean, here you have a guy with his background deciding to, flirt with communism, to learn Arabic, to then become Muslim. No problems with that per se, but you are leading the war on terror and not doing a very good job of it.
But also, didn't he issue the passports to the 19 guys out of the embassy in Jeddah or something like that?
I don't know if he personally did that, but I mean, he was definitely in Saudi Arabia for a long time as station chief. But so, just if I can, just staying back here on it's okay, on this particular point, if you want evidence of how enmeshed the FBI actually was by July 10th, and therefore Comey had to know, a lot about this by July 10th, unless the guy is a complete airhead.
It's possible, I mean.
He had to know, and the Democrats had, remember, July 10th is about 5 weeks before the Democratic Party entered into this agreement with the Clinton campaign to more or less
buy it out or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, why would you do something like that unless you're doing it out of fear? You're saying, I don't like this candidate, I don't like the place I'm in, but I can't contemplate losing. We've got to make sure that she wins. And fortunately, maybe the team around her would have said, we can control Hillary Clinton because there are flaws on the Clinton side, and when they get too uppity, we can control them, which I think that's crazy land. But letting her be president of the United States, there would have been no control. So this is a good resource. It's now up to, when we started on this several months ago, actually, I think we were, originally it might have been 13 or 14 or 15 dumps. It's now up to 20. If we go back,
a lot of dumps on Hillary Clinton.
If we go back into the slides, Jason.
It's the FBI equivalent of a Cleveland steamer. Sorry.
That's all right. Jesus, Jason.
Sorry.
No more kombucha for you.
Sorry.
All right, so if we hit this conservative treehouse one, that's it, yeah. I don't know who this person is, Sundance, but consistently high quality, excellent analysis of what was going on. This is basically arguing that it's a long one, and I won't try to summarize it because it would take too much time to go into it in depth. But in a nutshell, this argues that the FBI had the Weiner laptop, actually had Weiner emails, not the whole laptop. And the theory was that the lawyer, okay.
I'm not going to say
You're going to,
I'm not going to say
I'm going to give you a timeout. Anyway, so the FBI may have had a meeting with Weiner's lawyer where Weiner's lawyer may have said, listen, I have an insurance policy for my client. We do have a lot of emails that are very bad for the Clintons, the people around the Clintons.
Do lawyers threaten people with that?
Of course they do.
Wow.
And that's you would see that guy Michael Avenatti who's representing Stormy Daniels, or these pugnacious lawyers like that.
Yeah.
So, But the point here is that we don't really yet know what was on that laptop and who knew what was on that laptop and how carefully was that laptop examined. But this is an article that basically seems to say that people did have incredibly incriminating evidence that McCabe may have sat on it, but that ultimately Comey may have been put in a place where he had to try to get, at least do the pretense of doing the search warrant to get the laptop. But just focusing on the laptop's like a magic trick. The real story is that the lawyer supposedly went in a meeting with physical copies of emails.
Printed out?
Yeah, is the way I read that article. And somehow, some other way, other branches of the FBI got the whole laptop. And the question is, why wasn't the laptop examined the instant it was gotten? And the baloney arguments I'm hearing is that maybe it was gotten on one basis and they couldn't examine the interior because but I don't even know if that's correct.
But then it got stolen from a motorcycle.
There was another instance of that. So I think...
Why would you have critical evidence on a motorcycle? That makes no sense at all.
Why would you ride a motorcycle in New York City? That also makes no sense.
But if you're a motorcycle cop, okay, but why would they be like, hey, take this laptop and put it in the motorcycle and go have lunch or something?
Right, and leave it out on the stoop of your house overnight.
Why would that ever happen? I think if you have evidence like that, goes to a locker or a vault and that's it, no?
Yeah, and that's why we do need this Horowitz report to actually get into these kind of issues. So if we go back into the slides. Now, this is interesting. This is I don't know if this will work this time or not. Maybe you had it before.
Yeah. Why did that happen?
We did a long show on this a while back. I want to say even could have been last year.
Something happened. What was it?
I don't know.
Wow, lost the Google Chrome there.
That's weird.
That is weird. Where did all those things go? Hang on.
No worries. Catch my breath.
Oh, all right. Well, which one was the link?
This one. That was the one that we had trouble.
Yeah, here it is. Yeah, we're having trouble with it again. Oh, that's terrible timing, Charles. I'm very sorry.
That's right.
Went full screen on Comey, and now we're totally...
Comey's getting his revenge.
Yeah, very... Okay, so...
This one here.
Yeah, I'm having a very tough time locating where that link...
Well, if you go into the FBI vault, we can search on it.
Yeah, what is it that we're looking for? Affidavit?
Affidavit and Weiner, I think.
October.
Yep.
There it is. Something very strange happening with Google Chrome today here on this alternative screen.
Yeah, see this is filed on the 20th of December 2016. And when it was released, I'm not sure when it was released, but this is a nice long file. It's not all that long. It's, I think, 30 odd pages. And it gives you want to look at with your own eyes, you could see, here, it's 21 pages rather. So you could see the process that was going on, the fact that this search warrant was sworn out, and it explains why it was sworn out, what they were looking for, et cetera. And this is all up there. The FBI has put this thing up on its vault file for some reason. Now they exclude certain things and then they put other things in. I don't know the rhyme or reason why they do it this way, but here you have it. You can see for yourself.
Interesting. Yeah, it's an incredibly rich resource there.
So now here is this, I don't know if you...
Yeah, here, I'm going to get it back right now.
All right.
Boom.
Way to go. All right, so the True Pundit thing, yeah, that...
Love True Pundit.
Yeah, this was this last night, I guess. I love this picture.
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, that's like, I'm gonna get you.
But that's an older picture. Hillary looks a lot younger there, no?
Yeah, but this is a claim by True Pundit that there's an undisclosed big media company that has been sitting on a bombshell involving the FBI for months. And it says here, shielding Mueller, Hillary, and the FBI brass from publicity to disaster. I think could well be connected to this interval that we're talking about here, with the search warrant. Why did it take so long for the search warrant to be sworn out?
Yeah.
Why did Loretta Lynch behave the way she did on the tarmac? What was really going on? Why was the FBI investigation squelched from starting July 10th, 2015? What was McCabe really up to? Why did that veteran FBI agent resign suddenly early after the State Department walk-in on January 26th, 7th timeframe?
I really want to know who that was that walked in.
Well, I think we'll eventually find out. Maybe it'll be in the Horowitz report. So I think we're in a moment now where people are finally, a wide mass of the American population, and I think around the world, I think understands that this is not simply partisan bickering. It's not either Hillary Clinton saying that Donald Trump's a jerk and Trump's no. The wider concern across the political spectrum is that we've been played. People in both parties have been played by corrupt fraudsters.
Yeah.
The Clintons, elements of the Bush people, the Obama people, these Pelosi and those type of people, Feinstein, all of them. We've been played for dupes for too long, and we've delegated to these insiders at Washington and other state capitals the responsibility for fixing things because we didn't want to think about how to do it ourselves. We just wanted to go off and have fun. And that didn't work.
That didn't happen.
That did not happen. We may have had fun, but there was no solution. So we're in a moment now where I think people are coming together and things are changing. And I want to now just go over a little bit on the next page. Today, it's rather amusing. We could do it this way, actually. We could do it this way, Jason.
Yeah, this is perfect for Forrest Chump.
Yeah, because it turns out that 15 years ago, George W. made the mistake of flying this plane onto an aircraft carrier, and behind him, as he gave a speech, scant weeks after, or months or whatever it was, after we'd gone into Iraq, there was a banner flown that said mission accomplished, which was a very stupid move, whoever put that up there. And George W. is living that down to this day. He may never get over that stupid decision.
I don't think he cares. He always looks like he's having a good time wherever he goes. But Charles, this type of thing always gets me thinking, like, we see that sign, mission accomplished, and we're like, what are you talking about? The mission's not accomplished, but they might be talking about a different mission. I think disrupting everything and creating destruction was their mission, and he's like, hey, you did a great job.
I did what my masters told me to do.
Right.
So then here we have a development. We've shown you this William J. Clinton Foundation stuff before, but every time we showed it to you before, there were only two parts to it. Now, this one, Jason, if you can hit this William J. Clinton Foundation part 3 of 3, we're going to break some news here. If we can go into the top of the page here and go to page 138, which you can do by just going, and at the very top, you got a ways to go. You're 26 now.
Yeah, but I can grab this. See, it disappears quite quickly. It's a very annoying method. There we go.
138.
I don't even see the page numbers.
It's up top. If you just put the cursor up at the top, all right, 11 more pages. All right. Next. Page. Yep. Okay. Is this? Yeah. All right, look at this. This is an FBI memo dated the 21st of March, 2001. This is on their vault.
Huh.
So, no, I did not check to make sure that this is really the FBI vault. But
no, you did. You went to fbi.gov/vault.
But it could be a fake website.
Could be hacked.
Yeah, but let's assume that this is a real document.
The FBI has their websites under control.
We can hope, right?
Yeah.
And here's this. What does SC stand for? John David. Here's
Station Chief Special
Investigative Services. Okay. Note here, for the first time, there are three related cases. This is the public corruption case, 58A NY. So there was a case opened by March 21st, 2001. And in most of the other reports, all we see unsub, I forget what that means. It's
unknown subject, isn't it?
Yeah. William Jefferson Clinton, target of the investigation, former president of the United States. And look who else is.
Hillary Clinton.
This is the first time we
US
see
Senator.
Hillary was the subject of this investigation, okay? Which elsewhere we don't see that, okay? And so this is saying that by March 21st, 2001, the crack team of the FBI, and it was actually...
They were busy smoking crack.
No, this under Mary Jo White, I have to give her...
This is good?
Yeah, there was, this dump 3 of this one, you see daily reports of progress and large teams of...
So that's the first time we're seeing this, because this just came out.
Right, just came out. I only saw it this morning. It may have come out, several days ago. But interestingly, this Part 3 thing is not in the newly issued index. That was recently added or something. Sometimes they put it up there if it's recently added. So maybe they just slipped this in to see whether we watch them. And yes, we do watch.
Wow.
But this is very interesting. When you look at this, you see when the real FBI team wants to get in, go after something, they had multiple experts in multiple offices and multiple civilians, going right hot and heavy at this issue of what was Bill Clinton doing, giving this pardon, and how may that have involved Hillary Rodham Clinton as well. That it's just not simply about the Clinton Foundation. It could well also be about, was Hillary Clinton tapping in to campaign contributions via the Clinton Foundation, which I think is a high likelihood.
Well, it's also, just 6 months before the attacks of September 11th, which always causes me to wonder if there weren't a lot of people maybe involved in this investigation who were motivated to motivate other people to maybe not stop 9/11 from happening.
I don't know I don't know as much about 9/11, but on this one, what I do see are signs of a very responsive, hard-charging investigation led by the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of New York, Mary Jo White, at that time, and I don't see that same set of signs after one James Comey replaces her, which was announced, I think, in December of 2001, and effectuated early in January 2002. So I see signs of, there was great cause for concern here. Something had happened, something raised the hackles of the FBI. People were trying to get to the bottom of it. Then, of course, we have September 11th. I don't know where the FBI New York office was at that point. Perhaps some of these records were in New York then.
Well, but the other thing is Robert Mueller was not yet the director of the FBI.
It was Louis Freeh, until September 4th, 2001.
And why did Louis Freeh leave at that time?
I don't know that history. But the point here is, here's the FBI. I didn't cause the FBI vault to add this, 207.
Maybe you did.
No, well, it's your fault, actually. Blame it on you. But the point is that this tells us that there is additional information that the FBI with the highest level clearances, presumably Horowitz has those clearances, presumably he and his team could figure out what was really going on here so that they more properly understand the context for what seems to me to have been a period for 4 years where George W. Bush let the Clinton Foundation fraud escalate to gigantic proportions under his watch. And the people who should have seen, these are records of an investigation of the Clinton Foundation. Well, it's filed under that. And so this is a team that included ultimately Robert Mueller, James Comey on point as the U.S. Attorney in Southern District, the prosecuting attorney. There were 2 grand juries impaneled. These long files explain that there were hundreds of interviews, subpoenas, lots of information that we don't have in the public yet, that the FBI does have, and they couldn't make the obvious case that the Clinton Foundation was a fraud then, and the guy in the Department of Justice who should have prosecuted tax cases in charge of that, well, the entire department was Rod Rosenstein. So now you have Mueller, Comey, and Rosenstein botched this thing up, maybe for good reasons. Maybe there are other reasons, that there may have been a foreign power involved in this that we didn't want exposed. There may be all sorts of reasons why it went the way it went. But the problem with the set of decisions that caused this thing not to be prosecuted is that the Clinton Foundation went from being like a garden variety local fraud in Little Rock to being arguably the crime of the century, or the crime of the millennium. It's now intergalactic fraud.
Yeah. But what about this where it says precedence routine?
This is, I think, a request from one part of the FBI to the other part to avail itself of investigative services. I think if you read the text, it says to request that the Analytical Resources and Tools Unit help out with scanning information. But if you go through these different pages, you'll see they're talking about, we have massive files and we have all sorts of stuff going on. So this is the FBI investigation that Hillary was under beginning July 10th, 2015 is not the first time that she's been in Dodge.
They were initiated after Bill Clinton granted presidential pardons. So maybe this has to do with Mark Rich?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. This is the investigation here. If we could go back into the body.
The search of the thing?
Yeah, and go one back. Yeah, so here it explains. This is an investigation. This is the FBI talking about it and summarizing it this way, right? Saying it's an investigation of files related to the William J. Clinton Foundation. So that means the FBI has lots of files, right? And they should be looking at those files and asking themselves,
what happened?
Well, they should get somebody from the forensic accounting team and just take that person by the scruff of the neck and bring them up to the table and show them in theory, the audits for 2001, 2, 3, and 4. And if that forensic auditor needs more than 30 seconds to say this is a fraud, then that forensic auditor should be fired. Because it's obvious, if you know the rules, that the things that were passed off as audits are not audits.
Even if they don't march them into that investigation, they could just watch this show and find that out.
I hope they are.
Yeah.
So we did that one, and now this one, actually, can we go into the slide?
Sure. Anything you want, Charles.
All right, there we go. So I think this is the next page we need.
Sure. We're flying through today.
I'm trying to.
Great job.
I've got to get things under control here. So let's see. Yeah, this Health Alliance. I don't know if did you pull this one up before? Is that may not have been. This is really interesting. I saw that this morning. And note to the FBI, LinkedIn is just a wonderful tool, and people have a way, sadly, in LinkedIn of exaggerating what they may have done. And the problem with this Clinton Foundation approach is they paid very few people. They got a lot of volunteers to go through this, in some cases very rich people. And there's a guy who has on his resume now who brags about having raised $220 million. And I think a lot of it came from Ireland, the government of Ireland, starting around 2003 to go into Mozambique. We won't go through this 43-page presentation, but you can access it yourselves. And here's Health Alliance International. This is a charity that was involved with the Clinton Foundation and has filed books and records that I think implicates itself and implicates the Clinton Foundation in massive charity fraud. And the guy who founded this thing went on to be the U.S. AIDS coordinator under Barack Obama, Eric Goosby.
Wow.
And this charity is subsequently, I think, shutting down. Here is, they put this incriminating document together talking about how they were working with the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation at a time when it had no authority to do any of this work. So how smart was this charity?
16% of Mozambique has AIDS?
Well, again, nobody really knows in Africa because the health, we've been through this on some other presentations, the health systems in a country like Mozambique, which was just destroyed for decades with all the guerrilla warfare and mines and all that kind of stuff, it doesn't really have
hospitals and stuff,
roads, electricity, the ability to store medicines and run test
draw
equipment
blood and things.
And it's not like you go and you say to somebody in the bush, look, come in, here's your lollipop and here's the doctor's card, and why don't you come back over 100 miles of bush in 3 weeks, and we'll give you a teddy bear. It's not like they have the same approach that you have here in the United States, where doctors are nearby. So anyway, here you see that figure. Well, not here, I guess. In this presentation, you'll see that they're bragging about all the good work they can do. They're bragging about how this approach makes more sense than PEPFAR, which is George Bush's approach. The only problem with all this, the problem beyond the fact that the Clinton Foundation has no authority to do any of this work, is that some of the medicine that went into Mozambique came from Ranbaxy.
Right.
And there have been very few generic versions of the HIV/AIDS drugs approved by the FDA at this point in time. So what drugs, was the Clinton Foundation tapping into as a guess? Ranbaxy and maybe also Cipla, but these were not approved yet by the FDA. And subsequently, as we've talked at length, there's some massive problems with Ranbaxy and the Clinton Foundation and the drugs that the Clinton Foundation may have been accessing with funds purchased by governments. Beyond all that, there are no government donations shown in the Clinton Foundation books until 2008. And here we are in 2003 and 4 and 5. So we go back into the slides.
Is Miles, is that guy, I guess not, but the guy who owns Digicel, is he involved with the Ireland government at all?
Oh, sure.
Oh, what is
Absolutely. So that's Dennis O'Brien.
Dennis O'Brien.
It depends on, it's like over here, it depends on, which party's in power.
But he's just a contributor or whatever?
Oh, no, I mean, he's a force to be reckoned with. He managed to, he made a lot of money. He might be one of the richest people now in Ireland, or from Ireland, and he bought up the media. So he's dominates the media. It's very tough to investigate him in Ireland.
Wow.
So on the one hand, you have this massive illegal international expansion under George W. Bush's watch, right? Now, he's the president. The Clintons are mouthing off against him, criticizing him, manipulating the media against him. He, in theory, controls the IRS. But wait, Lois Lerner is in the mix of the IRS, providing an insulation against any potential assault on the Clintons. So, maybe we can excuse George W. Bush from missing what the Clintons were doing with the Clinton Foundation, even though, the Treasury Department kind of runs the Secret Service and the IRS, and, you kind of know when a former president needs Secret Service protection to fly around the world. Somebody should have known where Bill Clinton was. Somebody should have noticed all these memoranda of understanding that he was signing in the name of a foundation that he had no connection to. Somebody should have noticed that he was tapping these foreign governments for money to do stuff that the foundation wasn't allowed to do. Maybe they could have noticed this while they were negotiating with the National Archives to accept a donation from a fraudulently established charity. I mean, there's so many ways in which this should have been caught, and George W. was president for 8 years. But so how do they miss this? If they're not going to get the AIDS thing, how do they miss this thing that we've talked about before? I love giving publicity to Alana Goodman, the Free Beacon. And Alana Goodman is now at the Daily Mail, I believe. And one of the things that the Clintons did adroitly was they cultivated the American Indian wealthy donor class inside this country, and they also cultivated Indian people abroad. So they were able to develop, great ties into a country we had favored, as Barack Obama would like to say, Pakistan. But we had, until Bill Clinton favored that other nation. And here the Clintons come along. They get hooked up to this Rajat Gupta, who went to prison for excellent reasons. And I don't think the full scope of his fraud has yet been caught. And this is a long article that recounts in great depth the many names. It's almost, you pick any old name connected to the Clinton Foundation, the American India Foundation, that's Indian, and chances are there's a big problem with it. And this American India Foundation is today the largest foundation in the United States.
Wow.
Of Americans of Indian descent trying to help do causes in India. And its paperwork has never been policed properly. It has never been audited properly. No one wants to do anything about this. And along the way, Rajat Gupta arranges to funnel money into Bill Clinton and Chelsea Clinton and Hillary Clinton personally. That's not disclosed in any foundation filings. I mean, and this is just one plank of this. This started January 26th, 2001.
Wow.
Right? So this has been going on now 17 years.
Wow.
Nobody's done anything about it.
Oh. I mean, that's the thing. If you're engaged in this kind of like protracted, complex financial crime, and then it starts getting prosecuted 17 years later, you'd be like, hey, what are you doing? This is our business.
That's what we do. So, yeah, and they didn't notice. Here's something that went, and we talked a little bit about this. This is their tax form for 2004 that was submitted in 2005, right? And we talked about this before. You look at the first line of it, William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation. Is that its name?
They're missing
no.
the.
They're missing the the. Is that its correct address? No, it's not. I mean, we've been over and over this, but this has been in the IRS for a long time. I can tell you that when you get somebody who's not even a star accountant looking at this, they recoil in horror There's so many errors on this tax return that has never been corrected.
Is it strange that it would be a P.O. box and not an actual office?
Well, yes and no. Sometimes people like to use post office boxes if you're going to get a lot of mail. And it's just, it can be easier to do it that way, but I'm very much in favor of it. For an office, the mail should come inside the office, particularly if you're getting checks in the mail.
Right.
I mean, do you really want to run the risk that a crooked post office person or a crooked clerk or somebody else would look at this mail and say, okay, give me the envelopes that have the money in it. The other ones I'll give to the foundation, and then we'll go over here, we'll cash those checks.
I just would find it more annoying to go to the post office.
But if you go just to the next page, after this, sorry. Okay. After that? Okay, just stop right there. Okay. Here, just look at this, and people in the FBI, you just put away, and we're going to end with this, you just are sentencing an Arkansas-based former state rep for his role in what amounts to about $1 million fraud, okay? This is a statement here which says that 45,331,227 million, 45.3 million, was spent in 2004, and over here it says that all of that money was cash, okay? All that money was cash.
That's a hell of a lot of cash.
$36 million, okay? The only problem, 36 million of the 45.3 was cash, okay? That's the amount of money that supposedly was sent to the National Archives. Except it's clear that the National Archives did not get a cash check for $36 million. They got the right to enter into an agreement with the Clinton Foundation. There was a fraudulent agreement the day it was negotiated and struck, and it's been fraudulent ever since. They never got $36 million in cash. So by this entry right here, calling it a whole thing a cash expense, you're committing a $36 million fraud just by that act. Okay, and they have never tried to change this. They have never tried to correct it. I can go on and on and on. That's the biggest expense by far. If you go down the pile, I think the whole expenses are 57 million, 56 million. So it's not like it's, no percentage of the expenses. It's like 60% is a fraud right there.
Wow.
And these forms have been sent around to multiple states multiple times. They've been sent around to multiple countries. They've been sent to the National Archives. George W. Bush was president for 3 years. Remaining 3 years as this fraudulent thing circulated, and nobody said, you know what, we better nail these people on this because they're defrauding the National Archives, for Christ's sake.
When you say a cash check, what?
So if you go to me, and we're 20th century, what did you call it, 21st century 3D?
Yeah.
Right? And we discuss a business proposition, and I tell you it's $1 million project, okay? That I'm going to give you $1 million for this project.
Ortel 3D.
Or no, it's still 21st century's got brand
that's
recognition.
The movie we would make.
Or Ortel 3D, exactly.
Story
the
of your
producers.
life in 3D.
Yeah, that's right. The producers. So I say, you tell me it's going to be $1 million in cash that we need to spend.
Okay.
But then the story changes. You say, actually, Charles, I want you to give me $1 million, but I don't need to spend, $1 million. I'm only going to need to spend $400,000.
I'll keep the rest.
Well, that's it. You can't call that's the difference between a cash and a non-cash expense. Depreciation is a non-cash expense, right? You have a building, it has a useful life. The IRS says, well, you could say you're not spending any money, but you could say, we'll let you say that you have $150,000 a year of depreciation expense because the building is dropping in value, and we'll let you do that. That's the same idea here. You say that you're giving a cash grant to the National Archives of 36 million. The reality is that you didn't. And so therefore 36 million should be in the books, but it's not because it was stolen.
Great scheme.
And it's audacious. I mean, you think you're going to do. It's not like you're trying to be, really hide underneath the cleat
right.
You're
just stealing it.
Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create something that has no connection to me at all. We'll call it, let's say, the William J. Clinton Presidential Foundation, right? So
no one will know.
No one will know I'm connected to it. Could be another Bill Clinton, And then we're going to take the property of the people, we the people. These presidential records are our property, not Bill Clinton's property, and we're going to get a bunch of suckers to send money to a post office box to put up a complex that no one's going to know how much it really cost, right? And then when they give us the money, you know, to have a lot of fun, we'll thumb our nose at the National Archives and we'll defraud them. You know?
It's perfect.
And so that's actually what happened.
Crazy.
Right? On top of this, in this same time frame, you know, shortly after, or as the papers were coming together for accounting for 2004, we've talked about this Bush-Clinton-Katrina fund. You know, that's in my mind, that is a massive fraud. And you know, there was a lot of political pressure on George W. Bush to you know, make up for the mistakes he made as Katrina hit initially, where he had that guy Brownie or whatever his name, Michael Brown.
Oh yeah.
The FEMA guy.
Yeah.
Right. So they rushed in.
And they looked out the window of the plane.
Looks good.
That's crazy.
A little muddy down there. But
and they even took a picture of it. It's like, come on, how is he not stupid?
Yeah. Anyway, this is a series. I put it up there. It's there's actually, I think this is the third article so far on the Bush-Clinton-Katrina fund, and we don't need to go into the substance of it. Read this at your pleasure, your leisure, and you'll see when you dig into this. Particularly, you experienced prosecutors down there in Texas, in Louisiana, in Florida, in California, in New York. When you look at the actual facts here, the presidents began raising money for this fund when the charity didn't exist, and they did it for a month, and there's been no accounting for lots and lots of money that seems to have gone missing. And the reason I think the IRS may have decided not to do anything is that the political calculation was made, you know, saying, listen, okay, we made a mistake, the Democrats, we made a mistake, the Republicans, we're both going to look stupid. Let's not do anything about this because we don't want the establishment parties to look stupid. But that's the wrong decision to make. That's how the establishment has failed us again and again and again. The right decision to have made would have been to land on these people with a, you know,
both feet
hard, and that would have sent a clear message back then in 2004-05, well before this thing escalated into the mammoth $100 billion global conspiracy that it today is. Okay, this would have been stopped a long time ago.
They look guilty.
That's their white privilege, I guess. So we go back in quickly to the slide, perhaps. Yeah, we talked, we can skip, well, let's pull up the Fortune magazine piece, because I think that's the Dirty Medicine one, yeah. Those of you who are new to the broadcast, if you haven't had a chance to read this Fortune magazine piece, now I don't really like Fortune magazine, I think it can be very superficial, but this is a case of not being superficial. In fact, this is, what is it now? It's 5 years ago, almost, to the day. This is a very lengthy article that recounts in detail how Ranbaxy was ultimately caught and fined $500 million for distributing adulterated drugs, including HIV/AIDS drugs. In part, they don't button it up and get the Clinton Foundation the way I think they should, but they do tag Ranbaxy. And Ranbaxy has been a diabolical mess ever since this happened, arguably before it happened. But this is an article where people, the story begins on August 18th, 2004, right in the middle of that tax return when Bush was trying to get reelected.
Yeah.
You know, this is a story that people should have been focusing on much harder. It shouldn't have taken until 2013, 9 years, to almost get them. You know, and so the question arises, you know, why did it take so long to do this?
It's crazy.
Right. So
that Ranbaxy building is less than impressive.
Yeah. So, yeah. So how did they miss that? How did they miss this laureate Clinton Global Initiative and Clinton Bush Haiti frauds? We could pull up that shameless promotion. This, yeah. This is something that Mark Tapscott is a wonderful human being. He's now with what used to be called LifeZet, and the political piece of it is PolyZet. He has a distinguished career as an investigative journalist going back decades. And he wrote this. He asked me what I thought might be slightly different about 2018. And in a nutshell, one of the things that I think is very different is that Donald Trump is the president, has put his people in, that happened, and is taking control of the IRS, and appropriately control of the IRS and the Department of Justice. And this is a gigantic fraud, gigantic unprosecuted fraud. And it seems that to date, the establishment apparatus only wants to go after the small frauds.
Well, yeah, and then sometimes not even. Say that one's too small.
Yeah.
Steal more money and we'll talk.
And and so then, let's see, this is an interesting piece here. This American thinker, you had it right there.
Is that it?
Yes. So this is an article which goes through in great depth. I won't try to recount it, but it goes through the arguments as to who should be indicted for what charges. And it's a long list.
Yeah.
It's a very long list. And the question is whether the establishment, whether the swamp, whether the people who are in the system are going to get out of the way and let the landslides begin here. Because once you start picking on one of these people, a whole bunch of other people are going to fall. And I think it's just like OPEC. It's just like a cartel. When they have the market power, they can bring the price up. But the second the supply of oil greatly exceeds the demand, cartels can disappear overnight. Similarly, when the establishment loses its grip, the Democrat and the Republican Party...
Oh, the dominoes are going to start to fall.
Yeah, the contest will not be, how long can I wait this out? One or more of these co-conspirators, if they haven't already done so, are going to go back in somehow and say, listen, let's make a deal.
Yeah. Well, that's why I like it when you always say, like, you don't want to be the third, you know. The first person to make the deal is getting the best deal.
Right.
And saying that, I hope, would encourage someone who's got something valuable to do something.
I think that's already been happening. I really do.
Good.
So if we go to the final page, and we get this done, I think this is another page.
Sorry.
Let's not pull up the links because I want to try to make sure that we won't pull all the links.
Some good ones there.
We'll get to the good ones. But in the case of Kim Jong-un apparently agreeing overnight that he will meet Trump in the demilitarized zone, I mean, that tells you that a lot of preparation has gone into this, that people really, in Bush's case, they misunderestimated him, as he would say. In Trump's case, I think they severely underestimated Donald Trump and his people.
Yeah.
And he is maybe doing things here with regard to the Korean Peninsula that many thought were impossible. And he's doing them quickly, and there's some momentum building. And I think his team and he deserve enormous credit for moving the process this far along. Now, the Kim, whatever the last name is, family, have a long history of getting people excited and exacting tribute and then reneging on their word. So maybe this will not work, but at present it looks like it's going in the right direction. And I think it'd be nice to see. Nancy Pelosi apparently said, well, maybe Donald Trump would deserve the Nobel Peace Prize if she actually said something like that.
Really?
Yeah.
We got to find that clip. I don't know. That's very surprising. I mean, I agree. I think this is one of the hugest possible things to do. And people aren't even talking about how Chinagate and all that led to nuclear North Korea, and that was all Bill Clinton.
Right, exactly. Well, speaking of those type of problems, we also have this town hall piece maybe we should hit, but the second one here.
Yeah. Is it this?
That, yeah.
Why does it keep bringing up the print thing?
But we don't yet know, the public doesn't yet know the extent of here's 100,000 Iranian nuclear documents that the Israelis supposedly have gotten. Today, as we were putting the slide presentation together, there were reports coming out of the Middle East that the Israelis are moving serious armaments towards Syria. Ooh. Not going to put up any more with this idea of the Iranian troops in Syria getting ready to fire on Israel. So I'm not spoiling for war, but I do think that this idea of congratulating the Obama administration and Hillary Clinton for making the overtures to Iran and changing the course of relations between the United States and Iran is ridiculous. I mean, what we did, we've been played for suckers.
Well, they just sent them $130 billion cash, didn't they?
Well, I think what we did is we had frozen like 100 and some odd billion worth of assets We did send them like a 1.7 billion of fresh cash, sort of a down payment, and then we allowed them to sell their oil. So depending on how you do that math, it's a lot of money. And it's just, it makes no sense to me. I mean, the real issue in Iran, I think, is that the Iranian people have been under the thumb of the Mullahocracy since 1979. We had the near revolution in 2009, I think it was, when Neda was tragically shot, when the mullahs nearly were voted out, and we didn't do the right thing then, I don't think. And ever since then, particularly under Obama, especially under the leadership in quotes of John Kerry, now scholar in residence at Yale.
Oh, is he? Expert on ketchup?
Yeah, he's pretty good on that. Ketchup he likes the green ketchup. That's the ketchup that gave him the money. But anyway, so the situation in Iran is such that I fully expect Donald Trump not to go ahead with the Obama deal. We'll see if he...
Well, he always says he hates it, right? I mean...
Well, how can you not hate it?
Yeah, I agree.
Right? And with this, the 100,000, I mean, this is something that we have to fully absorb. The press is claiming that the Trump administration, there are press reports that suggest that Netanyahu did this presentation when he did it, but the U.S., and we have known about this for several weeks. So I would not be betting on the side of lenience towards Iran if that's what the mullahs are thinking. And I wouldn't be suggesting, if I'm Germany or a European ally that's trying to sell equipment into Iran, I don't think this is a good moment to cross the United States.
So, but the upshot of this article is that Israeli intelligence has revealed that Iran lied about having a secret nuclear program, despite getting all this money. Which, I mean, honestly, do you really need an intelligence program to know that? I think that was sort of obvious that they were going to do that.
Right, and again, the second you give in to bullies, you end, your life will be miserable for the rest of your life. And these Iranians, for some reason, believe they can bully the United States, bully Saudi Arabia, bully these other Arab states in the region. And not enough of this already. It's not like the period 1979 to the present under the mullahs is a rollicking success. I mean, there's some countries that have done worse, like Venezuela, but with oil. But there's no strong argument for cementing the mullahs' control over the people of Iran.
What about Iran's support for Hezbollah, Charles?
The same issue. I mean, Iran.
They're a terrorist organization, aren't they?
Well, Donald Trump said it best: where there's trouble, there's Iran. And I mean, it's that simple, and we don't need to, it's not a long guessing game here. We have 40 years experience with these people, on top of this mess. Now, does does our nation bear some responsibility for the mess in Iran? Of course we do. We messed around with...
The Shah and all that.
Yeah, Mossadegh and then the Shah, and, we have... we broke it.
That was the CIA who did all that.
Well, we broke it, so we should try to fix it. And I think the good news, though, out of all this, if there is any to be had, there was a long period of time, you could say we don't like the Shah, but under the Shah, there was more equality of the sexes. It was a highly cultured place.
I was speaking to a woman from Iran earlier today who had positive things to say about life in Iran under the Shah, and obviously hated the mullahs, whatever, and said that Iran is a mess.
It is a mess. And so I think we're talking now about what is happening. I think in the short term, we should assume that there's going to be a change in Iran, a very significant change. And whatever actions are taken against Iran are likely going to involve this unusual alliance or quasi-alliance of Israel, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Jordan, Egypt, the United States, and others are finally looking at them. I mean, if you look at what Iran did to Iraq, for example, partially...
well, with weapons from H.W. Bush and the Iran-Contra deal, no?
Right. I mean, we've been meddling there, and we've been doing a lot of bad things for too long. It's time to do right by the Iranians. It's time to stand up to these bullies. It's time to expose what really happened. I'd be very interested to see how many people around the Obama administration are on the take now from the government of Iran. How many consulting contracts, how many sweetheart deals, how many, lobbying deals do these people actually have?
I hate bullies, Charles.
I know you do. That's why I brought it up. So this is Zero Hedge claiming that Israel is, full bore ready to go to war against Iran.
Well, I don't doubt that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of a big move because there are not many people in Israel and there are a lot of people in Iran in terms of the population difference. But
I think the United States likes Israel better, though.
a little bit, yeah, just a little. So we're in a moment where there are a lot of serious challenges, and I think Donald Trump's attitude is these problems, when you let them fester.
But this war will happen in Syria, this war with Iran?
When something happens, when you light the tinderbox over there, it's unclear to say, how contained it might be. But we're currently, I think, Israel is certainly going onto a war footing, I would think, and we have troops all over the Middle East.
Yeah.
So if we go back into the slides, let's see. This is an article from Hong Kong about Niall Ferguson saying that Trump's foreign policy will put him across the line for re-election in 2020, his victories. I actually think that history is pretty much on the side of those who understand that economics drive the voter. But I think if we're fortunate of avoiding a debacle in the markets, if that happens, if we're able to navigate through the coming trade wars and other problems and the fact that we're in a long and stale theoretical boom that deserves some sort of a retrenchment. If by 2020 the economy's back on a solid footing, people see more after-tax income in their pockets, we don't have raging inflation, Donald Trump would win just for that. But if in addition to that, there are a series of foreign policy successes, you could see the kind of landslide victory that Reagan achieved.
I also think that even people who disliked or still do dislike Donald Trump, you got to admit the North Korea thing is like, if that happens, that's a Dennis Rodman slam dunk.
Well, it's like, I won't say exactly where I was this morning, at which Starbucks, but it's definitely a Starbucks filled with never Trumpers. And it reminds me of the chatter we had after the Soviet Union blew up. And we had, I remember years of Democrats saying, oh, Ronald Reagan's a madman, you can't put those Pershing missiles into Europe, you're only going to, and no, we can't do this, we got to do, and then Soviet Union blows up. And it was always a Democratic priority to discipline the Soviet Union. Ronald Reagan, is just this baloney that comes out of the mouth of people here. But
I hope someone can interview Kim Jong-un and ask him, did you actually hack Sony? Because that would be the stupidest possible thing ever.
You get Flozell to do that. You get that guy, Seth Rogen.
Right.
The perfect guy, right?
Exactly. Oh, right. Ooh, that would be great.
That would be pretty funny. So Kanye West, we don't need to, well, we can if you want, but
is that this?
That's the next one, yeah. So here's Kanye West. I don't know a lot about him.
He's a little wacky.
Most Hollywood celebrities are wacky. You know more about Hollywood celebrities than I do. But here we see, first it was Kanye West defending Candace Owens. Then apparently, a friend of mine sent me something, the famous, I think it's a football player, Reggie Bush, is now coming out and supporting that,
Kanye?
Yep. Well, the notion that the Democratic Party has taken African Americans and minorities for granted.
But I think also within the black community, there's kind of peer pressure to hate Trump. Like, I was watching Hagman and they had Diamond and Silk like last night or 2 days ago or something like that, and they were great. They gave I think those ladies should run for Congress. They were smarter than the people in Congress, and they were saying that like black people are giving them a hard time for supporting Trump.
Yeah, it's surface level stuff. I mean, I think people like to win. And, when you think about the minorities in the United States of America, yes, minorities are worse off than, white people and other classes of people, but that's inside the country. Compared to the rest of the world, even the minority people in the United States are pretty well off. compared to the rest of the world. And context is important. We don't want to see a system that dooms generations to living in ignorance and having no prayer of being productive in society, which was what I would argue the present system under the Democrats, public education and other important ways, is doing just that. And so what I think is important about what Kanye West and Reggie Bush and Candace Owens are saying is whatever we've been doing for the last 50 years, 60 years, doesn't work as well as it should work. How do we do things differently? How do we go from a system where Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton are living like multimillionaires, not paying their taxes while they're at it, and arguing for this and arguing for that and having these peace marches, but making damn sure that none of the money they get trickles down to their followers?
It's exactly what Diamond and Silk were talking about, how these guys say they represent the black community, but they're actually just holding down the average black person and taking all the money and credit for themselves.
Well, I use this phrase, maybe others have coined it before me, that they're merchants of misery. They want there to be misery, because if you're miserable, then you can agitate people to come out and do something and keep you in power, so you can take money away from the big corporations that want to be want to buy peace with you. So we got to change that business model. Instead of having all these eloquent spokespeople out there leading riots and rallies, let's have some competent people go in to the inner city schools, go into the inner cities across this country, and figure out how to fix them and make them competitive, and how to give real opportunity to people, or create the conditions where real opportunities, people can go in, they can find a way to compete one way or another, they can win, they can experience the joy of winning, both in the battle for business or service or whatever, but more importantly, they can win a paycheck, they can win a lifestyle where they're not beholden to Jesse Jackson or Al Sharpton, or for that matter, Donald Trump. They are winning, they're bringing home, they're eating what they kill, and that's a great thing to do.
I think Diamond and Silk are poised to really be historic figures in terms of, just the average person utilizing social media to get the word out, and they really speak to a demographic that hasn't had the opportunity to be heard.
So where I think on this one, there's great pressure. This is Thomas Paine, I think, again. He's hitting,
with this crazy photo.
Yeah, he's hitting the cover off the ball here at Thomas Paine at True Pundit. And I think that I understand that Congress people are now, they've had it with Rosenstein, with the stonewalling, with the say, it's kind of like Yasser Arafat when he was alive. He'd say one thing in English, oh yes, we want peace, and then to his Palestinians, he'd be saying, death to America, kill Israel, etc. That's, I think, what this guy is doing. He's, in a public forum, he says, oh yes, we're trying to move this along, and then in private, the swamp that's still in the Justice Department, the hidden and the overt swamp, are doing everything they can to impede and obstruct the discovery of what actually did happen with that investigation we brought up July 10th, 2015, and before.
I'm just fascinated by the maniacal, this photograph is...
not good, not flattering.
I'm speechless. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. So, Next, please, yeah. So this is an interesting one. This came out Sunday at 10:40 at night. It has 19,000 shares. That's a lot in, less than 2 full days. And it's basically drawing, this is your friend, Kevin Shipp.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Excuse me, basically saying that we have a reprise here of what may have been going on with John F. Kennedy when he took on the deep state, and that didn't work out so well for him.
Yeah.
This is serious business. A lot of people are a lot worse off for the experiment since September 11th, 2001. You can go back further, even to 1988, if you want to make a more rugged case against George H.W. But when you're honest in the accounting, and you look across the mass of the country, not the elites, not even necessarily the poor, you look at the tortured middle that is not eligible for the kind of aid that the poor are, and has to bear the cost of trying to raise a family, et cetera, and trying to hold on to jobs. We're not well off the way we should be. with the great resources, the great history, all the assets that we have in theory are not being deployed to the benefit of the overwhelming majority of this country. And we are, I think, he's right. We're in a huge constitutional crisis, whether Mueller tries to go down the path of indicting Donald Trump or not. The system is not working. The deep state is still interfering. We interviewed Jerry Corsi. His book made the New York Times bestseller list again.
Great.
Which is good. With all the obstacles they throw against a conservative book, it's quite something to actually make bestseller
I think
list.
people really like Dr. Corsi.
Yeah,
So.
he's a good man.
Yeah.
So let's wish Donald Trump and his team the best. Let's get through this. Now, we have here this story that came up a number of days ago about, we may have covered it before, that a mystery group of wealthy people have spent $50 million or so to instigate. Now, $50 million is a lot of money to spend.
It's a lot of money. You could spread that around.
That's right. It buys a few steaks. But anyway, the notion that people who would have this kind of spare change to throw around, 50 million, to obstruct the will of the people.
In between the seats of the car?
Exactly. and make sure that this Trump-Russia thing goes on and on and on and on and on. Let's remember here that in Russia we are talking about a country that has a massive nuclear weapons arsenal. We're not talking about Somalia.
Right.
We're talking about a country that that actually I think has been rather patient with the United States under Trump and under Obama, and for that matter under Bush and Clinton. Who is served by this endless mania, arguing that Russia's up to no good, Russia letting China off the hook, letting other countries off the hook, letting conspirators inside this country off the hook? Who benefits is the question we should ask ourselves. And I think it is likely we're going to discover that there is an internecine fight in Russia, that there are people who don't like Putin, there are people who do like Putin, and it's almost like there's a proxy war inside Russia playing out in the United States.
Huh.
So,
well, we know that George Soros is into meddling over there in that. Oh,
speaking of George Soros,
the devil, the actual devil. This is another guy who does not photograph well.
Right. Well, he's. I want to give a shout out to Katrina Blinova, who is the person who interviewed me for this article. And we have a very interesting way of doing things. She sends me questions. I do my best to answer them. And then she weaves these stories together. Sometimes she brings in other people. Sometimes it's just me. We've done quite a few of these. And I learn a lot from her questions. And
She's in Russia? Or she's
in Russia,
DC?
yeah. And she does these very thorough things with lots of links. Encourage the crowd to read it and tweet it out.
I would also add that just the mere ability to write in English when you are a Russian person that's very difficult.
Yeah. And they're very smart people in Russia, and Katrina is one of them.
Yeah.
So, and also I think decent quality output just from the way it looks and presents. So she does a lot of work. And there are quite a few. If you Google her, if you go onto the link at Sputnik for her, you'll see all that many articles that she's done. It's with an E. Katrina. BLI.
Here we go.
Yeah.
The power of Google brings us right to
There you
her.
go.
Boom. Little shout out for you, Katerina. Katya, Pravyet.
So we go back into the next one. All right. On I think the 30th of April, the Inspector General's website put this, what's linked here, put the story out that apparently there was an FBI agent that leaked, lied, and mishandled classified information, but the FBI decided not to do anything about it.
I think it would be a more concise story if they spoke about the ones that did not leak, lie, and
well, there are many that are wonderful, I think. But I think what happened, though, under Mueller and then under Comey, I think the FBI got politicized and weaponized.
Well, we've seen that clearly. I mean, we just heard from Scott Bennett the other day about how McCabe was meddling in the state Senate election there in Virginia. I mean, that's just like so flagrant.
It's outrageous. And so let's hope that this story here, Josh Gerstein, I think, is a pretty famous guy and widely followed. Let's hope that people will start asking the real questions here, which is why, if the guy did leak, lie, and mishandle classified information,
why didn't they do anything?
Why isn't he in prison?
Why no criminal charges?
Yeah, and you know, and what are the things that really irritates me, and I think irritates most fair-minded people, is when you see double standards. You see, particularly government people breaking the law but getting off completely, whereas civilians who actually are the people the government supposedly works for, being treated harshly for minor infractions.
Shot for having weed in their car or whatever.
Yeah. So if we go to the
they
next.
They declined to comment, Charles.
All right. Now this is a good one here. I don't know if this is the final one or not, but this came out also yesterday, and this is really interesting. This is an investigation into public corruption and charity fraud. 80,000 in bribes in exchange for influencing Arkansas state legislation.
A lot of that going around.
And another $250,000, but there's a larger issue with a charity. And one of the people involved in this is Cody Highland, who is supposedly leading the charge and taking a relook at the Clinton Foundation, at least from the Arkansas piece of it. Now, why is this interesting? When you pull on some of these names and you look at the charity involved, you discover that this conspiracy may implicate BKD, the accounting firm.
Oh, yes.
And it may even implicate, potentially, people affiliated with the Clinton Foundation, including possibly Bill Clinton himself.
Oh.
So this, I think, is a hopeful sign that that Cody Highland has only been in this position for a short period of time, not yet a year. He's taking on the politicians in the state of Arkansas in a visible case here. Maybe, one hopes, laying the groundwork for a much bigger exposure, which would be the Clinton Foundation and all its satellites below these many years.
You got to hand it to him, Charles. Bill Clinton is prolific, if nothing else.
That's right.
Now, I think just the last one, what we've got here is a picture of the guy.
Right. There you go. So this is the person who has now been tagged for like all in less than $400,000. He would appear to be African American.
Well, that's what I was going to say. And if Quinn Michaels were here, he would say that once is random, twice is a coincidence, and a third time is a pattern.
Yeah.
So.
And that's just really toxic to this country. To the idea that you would be the African American Corinne Brown, this person, you go away for less than $500,000, whereas the big dog here, he takes something that is badly broken in the beginning when he's president, then really messes it up under George W. Bush. Then once he gets George W. Bush and his father involved in the fraud so they can't complain about it, that's when they go into outer space. That is just, Donald Trump, if he wants to be remembered well in history, has got to stand up, his administration's got to stand up now and send a clear message to the swamp that what this person did was bad, but what Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and Chelsea Clinton and the trustees and all the people involved with Clinton is way worse, and they need, an example needs to be made of these highly educated, privileged white people, who are not, they didn't break the law, they crushed the law, they smoked the law, they bleach bit the law.
Yeah.
And the public deserves to know whether Donald Trump is just talking, or whether on the issue of draining the swamp, whether he's going to, get the Drano bottle out. And if you need some help with Drano bottles, we got one.
Yeah, just looks like a slightly older photograph, because I think now in his older age, Bill Clinton, after his heart attack or whatever, he became vegan and he's like super thin. And here he looks a little bit more McDonald's-y.
Yeah, it's probably old. But I think...
it's 2008, so it's 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Interesting. And what is this guy's? That's Hank Wilkins IV?
Right, and apparently his father was a big Arkansas politician, so...
Yeah, so obviously everybody in Arkansas is going to know Bill Clinton.
Right, but what I'm saying here is that...
This could be their roadkill barbecue at Arkansas.
It probably met at that roadkill barbecue. But, it's just refreshing to see that Cody Highland is making some progress. It's refreshing to note that we're under the 2-hour mark by 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's great. Very good, very good. So we've got the new 90 Seconds with Charles Ortel segment. Very attractive opening graphic for that.
Well done, art department.
And I have an idea for how we'll use that in an ongoing way. But you know, Charles, I do want to remind people that it's really important, if they enjoy the program and the different variety of guests and information that Crowdsource the Truth offers, is very important that people become sponsors, either by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, or even just doing a one-time sponsorship payment at paypal.me/crowdsourcethetruth. And it's funny, because May 1st, every time the first of the month is when Patreon actually says, okay, here's the money. And several people dropped off today, so I appreciate the pledges, but you gotta come through or it doesn't actually pay the bills. The other thing I wanted to point out, in case people have forgotten, is that we still do have the merchandise store on redbubble.com, and later tonight I'm going to add the very attractive green regs and spam. Scam, sorry. Green regs and scam, because a lot of people have been asking about that. But of course, people can order any of these attractive items. You want to get involved in the time phone hack, you can still get that Hack to the Future mug, or you could get it on a t-shirt if you're a fan of the Quinn Michaels meme, and so many of the different graphic opening logos. Podfather is on there, and there's Imran Awan stuff, and lots of good Charles Ortel material. I think we got the Great Fortel in there somewhere, and this is a good one too. The Russians are coming. That was a nice one. I think people enjoy it. You get Barack Obama in there and everything. So it's Mother's Day is coming up, and if your mother enjoys Crowdsource the Truth, you get some of those items. All right, Charles, so we'll be back on Sunday with Charles, and until then, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.
And thanks everybody for watching. I'll see you tomorrow.